Hello folks, this video is VMware Workstation, where we are going to connect two virtual machines via a virtual network within your virtual machine. So what you see in front of you is VMware Workstation, and I have an Ubuntu 20 desktop all set up. It works just fine and everything's set. So what I want to do is, rather than recreate another virtual machine, I want to clone this one. So you go to VM and you can say clone, and then it walks you through a few questions and it asks you to make two types of clones. A linked clone is where it takes a copy of what you have and then any changes you make are added to it. So you could have one machine that has 5 or 6 different changes in it. A full clone is just that. It's a complete copy of the virtual machine as it is. And this is what I want to do. And I'm going to call this version 2 and put it in my default location. And then when I do that, there will probably be some background noise throughout this video, so have patience. And I hit next and finish, and then what it does is it clones it. This is something that may take some time. I happen to be on a rather fast RAM based system, so I probably have about 15 gigabytes of data on that first setup. So as this is cloning, the one thing you have to remember when you clone your machine and you're creating a network is you want to change the host name. Because if you have all your machines named the same, the router doesn't know who to talk to. So we want to make sure that there is a name change. In our VMware, while it's grinding away here, we have a network adapter. Let me explain briefly what these are. Now, if I go into settings, I don't know if it'll let me do this, is that I have a network adapter, and notice I have a few options. NAT stands for Network Address Translation, and this is the default operation. What this allows you to do is your VMware virtual machine goes through your host IP address and connects to the internet. Bridged is as if you have a new piece of hardware and it's plugged on your network. You get a separate IP address, you get a separate MAC address, and it works great for home type use. Bridged will not work at MJC. They block all ports, so you can have only one MAC address per port, and you'll get to MAC addresses and all that stuff in your networking class. Host only is how we are going to connect our two virtual machines. So we will have a host to host virtual machine. Okay, that's where we're going with this demo. I'm going to hit cancel, and I'm now done. Okay, so it's there. So what I want to do is, since I have this one is set to NAT and this one is set to NAT, I want to add a network card to my original. Okay, we're going to add a network card, and I want to give it host only. Okay, and I hit save. So my original now has two adapters. Okay, one's host only, one's NAT. On my Ubuntu, the second one, the clone, I'm going to change this adapter to host only and hit save. Now I'm going to boot them both, and on my machine I have plenty of RAM for this kind of thing. Everybody asks me, how fast do you want your processor? Nope, just more RAM. More RAM, for this very reason. Okay. Now both these virtual machines have the same username, same password. So one of the first things I'm going to do on the clone is change the host name. Okay. So there it is. Go into here, VMware. I always use the same password when I create a virtual machine. It's called VMware 12. So if you get a virtual machine from me, it's got that as the password. Okay. And so first thing I need to do is change my host name. sudo edit etc host name and give it my VMware 12, and I'm going to call this Ubuntu 2, and then what is that? Control X and save, and then I want that really bothers me. sudo that's it, host name. There we go, Ubuntu took. Alright, so there I am. Now I want to look at my networking. So you will see if config doesn't work. It does work on some distributions. What you have in Ubuntu is everything that goes with IP route 2. Okay? These are the more modern ways of doing networking. So we use IPA, and what this does is it shows me the addresses of my IP addresses. So notice I have a 192.168.130, and I'm on version 2 here. Let's go over here, see what he says. And we'll do the same thing. We don't need to change the host name. The host name is the one we cloned from. And let's take a look at our IP addresses. Notice I have several. I've got this one. This is my NAT. This is the NAT address. Okay? And notice this one. 128 and 127, and this one was what? 130. So if I go over here and type in ping 192.168.227. Now these all change based on your distribution or based on randomness. Because see, so now I can ping, Control C. Unlike ping on Windows, Windows defaults to this. Pings 4 times and quits. Linux will ping forever until you tell it to quit. Okay? So I've got communication going between the clone to the original. Now let's see if I can go the other way. Put in, if I can type the address right. Nope, 128. No, that's this one. I want 130. Oops. Let's see what I do wrong here. 192.168.227. Oh, I forgot. Wrong IP address. 227. There we go. So it's talking. One of the tools I install almost always is Nmap. So I can use Nmap to see what's actually going on that host. And I can see I have a port open. So I can now SSH to tux at, what was my address? 192.168.227.130. Yes, VMware 12. There it is. I am now on my secondary host. Wait a minute, it should be Ubuntu 2. Oh, it's because I didn't reboot. Okay. It still says Ubuntu as the host name because I haven't rebooted it. When I reboot, it'll go to change the host name. So let's do that. sudo reboot. And then what will happen on my original is you'll see my connection has been reset. That, in a nutshell, is connecting two virtual machines to the same network. Now, one of the things that you can do is create a new virtual machine using a router type of operating system. And in this case, I'm going to go to here. Whoops, boot ISOs. I'm going to go to pfSense. This is a firewall router distribution that works on old hardware, and it's based off FreeBSD. And I want to call it pfSense. Okay. Next. I'll just take the defaults here. Well, that's pretty tiny. Let's give it a little bit more RAM. It's very, very efficient. And in this case, I want to use NAT because we're going to add controllers to it. Take the defaults. And then when it comes up, it gives you all these options. This is a BSD. I used FreeBSD for a long time. It works great. It's just there's a lot of weird software you can't find that you can't find on Linux. And then to make sure you use your Control-Alt to release your mouse. So my mouse is now on my host, and then if I left click my mouse, it goes back into the virtual machine. And I say install, and let's just go down to, we have to make sure we pick the right one, because this goes all over the planet. We want English. Test default. Let's continue. All right. Guess let me do that. I need to put in. It's been a while since I've used this one. Continue. Oh, I have to go up one. There it is. And then we'll use auto to install this. And then what's happening is that this is actually just creating the equivalent of your Linksys router with a built-in VPN, with a built-in DNS server, with a built-in firewall, built-in all kinds of stuff that you don't get with your standard home Linksys router. Okay, now finished. Hit enter. That's it. Okay, so then you'll have to obviously go onto the website to see how all this works. But what I'm going to do is, notice it's running as root, so I can type in shutdown now and hit enter. Time has arrived. Oops, I should have just typed. Should have just left it go. Shut down now. There we go. Has arrived. Enter full path of shell or return. Okay, basically it's off. Now what I do now is I can go up here and power and force off. And right, power. There it is. Power, and then we want to do basically a force a power off. Boom. Now, what do we do now? We need to add a network card here. We want to add a network card, host only. All right, so here's my network adapter. Hit finish, hit save. So now I have, whoops, now I have this as host only, and I could make this one bridged on my network here at home and give myself a new IP address. Hit save. So now my pfSense is acting like my Linksys router. So I have host only here, but my Ubuntu over here, I need to change the settings and remove that one. Okay, can't do it while it's running. Hit save. Now I have a virtual network ready to go with all the configurations I need to do. I've got 2 virtual machines to go to the host network, and I have my pfSense router firewall that has a host network and bridged. I could use NAT. It doesn't matter in this case. So this is in the essence of how you create a virtual network completely separated from your network in the house in your own little VMware workstation world. Okay? So that in essence is it. There are other options besides pfSense. There is this other one that I have used in the past. It's called Vyos. And it is, it used to be free, so now you have to pay for it. But if you're a student and you use your student email address, you can get the rolling release. And this rolling release is, again, it's built on FreeBSD. FreeBSD actually has a very robust TCP/IP stack. Okay, and call it Vyos. It doesn't really need much RAM because it's acting as like a Linksys router. How much RAM does your Linksys router have? You probably don't even know. So we can say, let's boot this live. And basically, this won't even use hard drive. It just boots off the CD-ROM, and then all your configurations are stored in RAM until you reboot. You can store it to a pen drive. pfSense has the same functionality. You can actually make an old machine a hardened firewall where you customize the ISO, and the ISO is, there's no way anybody can change it. It's a read-only. And then you log in and you configure and all that stuff. And then for Vyos, you need to go to their website, vyos.io, and pfSense is just you just search on pfSense. And again, these are software versions of the equivalent of your Netgear, your 2-wire, or your Linksys router. Okay? So on that note, you now have the core of what it takes to build out your internal network. Okay? On that note, I will stop the recording.